This is the Humane AI Pin.
It's been blowing up the internet over the last few months.
One of the strangest products I've ever seen.
It's a device made entirely for interacting with AI systems. Look at this and tell me what it is.
The image contains a hand holding a green and blue stuffed animal. The stuffed animal is a Pokemon character named Bulbasaur.
Engagement comes through your touch, voice, gesture, or the laser ink display.
Is it going to track my hand around when I move, or do I have to have my hand in the perfect place?
As I move my hand back, it knows that.
You're supposed to sort of roll your palm around, and I just cannot get it to work reliably.
There are times it's driven me freaking crazy. It's a fascinating concept, but I don't think it's fully there.
More than once, I've had the pin itself actually overheat and tell me it needs to cool off before I can use it again.
When I asked it how many chicken nuggets there are in a 20 chicken nugget share box, it said, without a hint of caution,
The box contains fried chicken nuggets. There are 14 chicken nuggets in the box.
The fact that it's its own number and not connected to your phone?
$700.
$24
a month.
That's a tough sell.
Yeah.
But even still, there are these moments when I do something that doesn't work, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so cool when it does work. It's certainly true that if you want to ask ChatGPT a question, the pin is going to be a faster way to do it than your phone.
It's good that tech like this is being funded because exploring new concepts and ideas and form factors is good.
It's obvious how much thought Humane put into a device that you're going to wear every day.
Am I curious to see where it goes? Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe someday this will be like a revolutionary product that changes the way we all interact with each other. Maybe we're just seeing some hiccups now, but a few product generations down the line, this thing is really gonna take off. It'll be more refined.
There's a ton of examples of companies that were just too early to the tech, and I think this is the case here.
I asked it, what's this tree in front of me? And it told me, it's a Japanese maple. And there was something incredibly uniquely satisfying about gaining that insight without needing to be interrupted from the moment with my phone.
There's times where you decide you don't want to bring your phone.
A mobile computer that it is impossible to doom scroll on.
Yeah.
Good. That's good.
Right.
That is good.
It occasionally does things that you're like, oh, I see it now.
Estamos casi listos para enviar la versión final.
We are almost ready to ship the final version.
Catch me up.
Yanir asked if you want to get hookfish with Sam this week. Michelle sent some notes about today's design sync. Andy and Adam are on their way over.
The truss light indicates when its input, optical, or audio sensors are active.
More transparent than the devices you have today.
Your data should be owned by you and only you. At Humane, we call this next era of compute the intelligence age.
Where do we want to be as a society? Where do we want to be as individuals? How do we want to progress?
This is the possibility of reimagining the human-technology relationship as we know it.
All right. Thank you both for being here today. So you are the co-founders of Humane, and you just launched your first product, AI Pin, which people have a lot to say about, and we'll get into all of that. But I feel like there was a ton of curiosity around this, maybe more so than you guys were initially expecting. But I feel like it came from this mystery around this group of people with really strong backgrounds, like what are they building together? And then come the reveal of AI Pin, it's this deviation away from what big tech companies have been iterating on the past decade, you know, like another version of a rectangular device, just adding another camera. Then we have, you know, attention economy baits. And then now we're seeing, you know, sci-fi depictions of extended realities come to life. So again, like your product is definitely a shift in that timeline. But how do you guys define what Humane is today?
You want me to start?
Yeah, sure. Go at it.
Yeah, so it is different, I think, because it needs to be different. You know, I think we've got such an amazing dependence on the products that we coexist with today, and they're powerful, incredibly powerful. But there's also some downsides as well, and you know, I think we feel like we've done an amazing job contributing to some of those products, but we haven't really had the sort of license to do anything about the other side of things. And I think, there's a lot of people that think that Humane exists because we want to fix that stuff. It's not so much that. It's because I think we just want a better relationship with technology to be able to get more out of our compute products. And so I think that's a huge endeavor, right? Like a tall order, and it's a massive hill to climb. It's what we're really about, though. We are really about how do you actually get more from compute versus like getting rid of compute. How do you actually think of new ways to interact with it? Think of new ways to really draw from it. How can you actually leverage things like context to allow for the devices to disappear somewhat and allow for the experiences to come forward? Because I think that's what we all really gravitate towards, right? Is we really want those experiences to be full front and center. Just like that's the stuff that you gravitate towards technology for to begin with. And that's the piece that really allows us to get excited, to really like focus on like how do we actually bring more of that forward. And that's the charter, right, for us.
Yeah, it's hard to change people's mindsets because everyone's so inundated with their devices in the way they are now with the form factor of the phone and so on. But for listeners' sake, I am going to read your bios to you.
Okay.
So Imran, you worked at Apple for almost 22 years. You went in as an intern initially. What year was that? Like
1995.
Wow. Okay. So you were there for the Mac, iPod, iPhone. You were on a small design team that made the original iPhone interface, and you ended up as director of design. Bethany, you joined very soon after the iPhone launch, correct?
2008.
And you worked at Apple for about 8 years. The big initial project was the iPad, and you ended up as director of program management for the operating systems, focused on software engineering. And you guys have many working with you at Humane who were also at Apple. So I got to know, what's the lesson from your time at Apple that each of you find yourself referencing or thinking back to most often?
They really rely on bringing together incredibly talented people and, supporting them and encouraging them to do things that seem impossible at the time. And they've done that many times over. And we were fortunate enough to be a part of that. And I think one of the things I appreciated about building there was that when things got really hard, when there were huge issues, there was very little finger pointing. It became about the team coming together and just trying to, overcome that challenge in that moment. And everybody wore, during every project we were a part of, everyone wore 1,000 different hats, and you were, whatever it took, you were going to, build the product and make it happen. And so I think we definitely brought a lot of that to Humane.
I think the thing that we index here is the passion that really allows for that to exist. And so people that we hire, whether they come from Apple or whether they come from places like Tesla or Google or other, many places actually form the company and the team that we have today, they're all very passionate people. They really care about pushing things forward. And they just have a different way about them because that passion is just so real. And I think when you have people that are super passionate about something like pushing compute forward, really cool things can happen. And I think that's one of the things that I really loved about my time there.
I tell people a lot that the other thing I really loved, especially in the early days of Apple, it didn't really matter like what your role was, what your title was. There was really, and this was very Steve thinking, but it was basically pretty black and white. Like, was it a good idea or a bad idea? Didn't matter like who it came from. And so I think that's something we also try to really, instill in our team in Humane, is that the more brains, the better. Like, everybody should be part of the dialogue as much as possible, be more transparent and open as much as we can. But really, sometimes the ideas can come from places that are unexpected. And I think that was something I loved, that especially when there were problems or issues or you're trying to overcome a really big challenge. And we've had many of those at Humane, building something that's really hard, that's never been built before, that is just going to continue to evolve and iterate. That there are moments where we have to pull everyone into a room and say, okay, we have this challenge. It seems really hard. We don't know how to solve it. Like, who's got some ideas? Crazy ideas welcome. Any crazy ideas? Who has an idea? And that's something that I loved also. And that came from Apple too.
So you both left Apple in late 2016. You just mentioned Steve Jobs. And I've seen a lot of people question now, more than a decade after his passing, what would Steve Jobs think about humanity's relationship with the iPhone today? And I don't think that's like anyone's question to answer, just kind of like an interesting thing to ponder. And also most critiques I feel like about our relationship with smartphones have to do with apps that are non-Apple. It's just kind of like, what the design of the iPhone invited into the ecosystem. But Imran, what were your driving principles and like motivations when initially working on bringing the iPhone to life? And how do you look at the nuances of that relationship today? You touched on it a bit earlier, but I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah, I think it was really about moving compute to being something that you could actually do outside of your desk, right? And so we used to talk a lot about being able to take things from your PowerBook at the time and just kind of eventually do them on the iPhone. And a lot of it was really just around simplifying interactions, right? We had done a lot of work on the team and I had done a lot of work on OS X, which was the operating system that we worked on when Steve came back to Apple. And the goal there was to get it to just be something everybody could use, right? Macs for a time were like that, and then Windows came in and just kind of proliferated because of business and got into the schools and such. And so a lot of people were using Windows as a result. And Macs were crashing a lot, and they weren't really reliable, but they were still the right space for desktop publishing and things like that. And so we worked closely together to create an environment for the Mac that was easier to use than the original Mac, that was something you could trust. And then we started to say, okay, well, we're starting to get a lot of people that are using the Mac now that weren't using the Mac previously, and how can we allow them to take that to the next level? That's where multi-touch came in from, and just really giving people the ability to directly manipulate their interfaces, touch it essentially, and then be able to get rid of the contextual menus and the complexities of the menu bars and things like that. The tool that was the iPhone and the modern day smartphone was an amazing product, right? And so the principles were really around getting more people to be able to access these tools without the learning curve that is the menu bars and the contextual menus, the more powerful tools, like really making it simpler for you to be able to do a lot more things, right? And I think that's the work that I'll speak for myself at least, that the team is probably most proud of. I feel that way. We definitely made an impact when it came to creating a tool that a lot of people could use. It turned out to be the most popular computer of all time.
I was going to say that was an understatement. Yeah.
And that was it. And so I think the interesting thing is that being a great tool, we really didn't have much control over what would actually be on there and what other people would want to use it for. And that's where I think things became different.
And come 2018, 2019, you two started building Humane. Within that 3-year gap of leaving Apple and starting to build this, where were your heads at, and how did you come to the conclusion that this is what you wanted to work on?
Well, when we left in 2016, we got married. So that was kind of our first goal was to go and get married. So we did that in December. And we took some time. We have a now 17-year-old, but at the time she was 8, and really wanted to focus on family and, as a new family coming together, wanting to really just focus on her. And so we did that for a while. And that was really important because Apple was in many ways all consuming, just like being an entrepreneur is. So we really focused on that. And then we went to CES in January, actually. So we got married, and then we said, well, at Apple, we were never able to go to CES, so let's just go. Me and you, we'll go check it out, see what people are building, see what's happening outside of Apple. It was also very closed when we were there. You know, we weren't really kind of taught, I think, to look outside of Apple and see what people were building for many reasons. And so we said, let's just go kind of open ourselves up and go talk to people. And so we went by ourselves and spent a couple days just meeting people and seeing what was being built and where people were investing their time and money. And that was really eye-opening, I think. And then we got a space and we said, let's maybe try being a consultant for a little while. Like, we have a lot of experience, and between the two of us, we have like this really, I think, big breadth of experience and expertise. And so let's see if we can help other people. Like, let's, look at different areas and different verticals. And one day before even the idea of AI Pin came about, I came home and I'd been out the day doing something with our daughter, and Imran was taking things apart in the house, and he had this piece of paper and he had these pieces from a projector, and he was like displaying the projector on this piece of paper, and he had this big piece of other paper that he had written this kind of one pager about this idea. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, I have this idea. This is what we need to build. And this was in 2017. And I said, okay, give me the details. And he went through this one pager. You actually can find it. I think it ended up leaking because we used it as the basis for our first patent, I think, that we got on the product in 2017 or 2018.
I saw it, I think.
There's a ton of spelling errors in it, which actually people online thought like, this couldn't possibly be real. There's all these spelling errors. I'm like, nope, that's real. It was just ideas on a page, and they were Imran's initial thoughts about like, this is what this thing needs to be. And it's very similar to what we ended up shipping. I think there's maybe very minor changes ultimately at the base vision. Like, I think Imran, but we originally thought maybe we would need LiDAR, and there was some other things in there like that. But for the most part, the OS and the device are very much in there in that page. And so I said, okay, this idea seems crazy and seems really hard. And I'm not sure. My first instinct was, I don't know how to build a phone that small. But I believe in Imran, and I have to have some blind faith with him a lot because he has the ability to kind of see and, in the future. And we think about things really differently. And he kind of processes everything really quickly in his head, where I want to like draw it out and sketch it out and like build a spreadsheet and think about it and talk to people and do research and do some data gathering. And so I said, okay, well, let's start building. Let's start seeing what we could prove out to ourselves about the technology. And so that really started that in about the middle of 2017. And it was around the same time, actually, that we had gone to dinner, Imran and myself. And there was this family next to us at the table, and there were 2 parents and 3 kids, and they were all on their phone, and they weren't even acknowledging each other's presence like the whole time. And I just looked at Imran and I said, like, as much as I'm proud about the work that we did and about being a part of this thing, you can't not acknowledge that there has potentially been, and this was early, 2017. I said, you cannot not acknowledge that there's potentially been this negative effect. And I said, I'm just really curious if they've ultimately made us happier. And so that sent us down this path of like doing some research into happiness and, what do studies say about happiness? And there was a study that had come out around that time that talked about presence and how people, when they asked people to self-report their happiness levels, they had this app, and everybody would they'd be pinged to report how happy you feel in this moment. And what the study found was that people who were more actively present in the moment reported higher levels of happiness. And presence in the moment could mean, you're not stressed about a test you have tomorrow, but it could also mean you're not thinking about what to make for dinner later, really mundane things. It really just means are you fully present in the moment? And so these two things kind of came together, which is Imran's vision for where computers need to go and AI and how that could, really drive it. But then also at the same time, us wrestling with this idea of presence and happiness, and how could computers potentially help, if we build it in the right way, how could it help?
Yeah, I love that train of thought. And I feel like a conversation everyone is trying to make here is that it's AI pin, versus the smartphone. And something a lot of people bring up is, why would I do XYZ on this device when I can already do XYZ on my smartphone? And it's like, you can also already do that same XYZ on your, laptop or desktop, but you choose your phone over your laptop or desktop for certain things because, the design, ignites different behaviors and, they just play different roles in your life, even though they can pretty much do most of the same things. So when people critique that AI Pin's offerings should just be an app or that big tech companies are going to, integrate such offerings right into their own AI assistants right on the smartphone. What's your response to that?
I was just going to say, Imran did a great video, I think, that we put out yesterday that talked about presence and freedom. And you're right that a lot of the things you can do on your phone, you can do on your laptop. But why do you do them on your phone? You do them on your phone because you want to be more mobile. You want more freedom. You don't want to be at your desk or on your laptop. And so at some point, when everything is smart and easy to use, it becomes about what offers you greater freedom. And now we're moving into this, like, what offers greater presence vector as well. And so it's right. Every new product doesn't replace the thing before it necessarily, but it fundamentally changes your relationship with it. Just like the phone didn't replace your laptop, but it gave you a much more focused relationship with your laptop, and it allowed you more freedom with the phone because you could leave your laptop and be out in the world. The same thing is true of AI Pin. It's about how do we give you more freedom and also more presence. And, I think that you've been talking a little bit about that more recently. Yeah.
I think that we should expect that AI will change everything in all of our aspects of our daily lives, right? Whether it's our desktops or phones, microwaves or washing machines or whatever, vehicles, etc. There will be a massive shift in terms of how those products are developed and how we use them. And I think AI is really going to be the through line for all of that. What for AI Pin in particular, it's driven by our AI OS, which is something we call Cosmos. It's really about the things that we talked about. It's like, how do you actually have a sort of an elevated compute product that allows you to have more awareness, allows you to have more freedom, and more presence. I personally love the work that we did on things like smartphones and desktops and laptops, and I built a career out of building those kinds of products.
You'll probably build more of them.
and we'll continue to build all kinds of computers. I think what AI Pin offers, though, is something that we don't have today. We don't have a computer that is incredibly personal, that learns about you, that gets out of the way, that allows you to do some of the things that allow you to maintain a balance and allow for you to stay in the moment, but still be connected. We just don't have a product like that, and that's the hole that AI Pin fills, right? In the same way that a smartphone filled, how do you actually go away from your laptop or desktop and do some of those things today? And you can do some of those things really, really well. But the idea, though, is that there's always going to be some sort of limitation with any kind of compute form factor. AI Pin certainly has some of those as well. But there's always going to be something you can do versus something you can't do. And I think that's the big attribute of any kind of form factor when it comes to compute. AI Pin just gives you the ability to just be there all the time. It's the moment I think of something, I can operate on it. It's the fastest computer there is for that. And then because it's able to do some of this generative work that is very closely guarded, right? We have to be very careful about this whole generative space as well, because you can end up like just generating your way into all kinds of nonsense, right? And so we want to really be careful about that. Like, so the productization of all of these things is really, really important as well, and we care a lot about that. But the moment you think of something, you should be able to act on it without having to go off and do something. It really becomes like this conduit between your thought and compute, right? Which is my hope going to be the closest thing that you can get to before you implant something in you. And so there's a camp of people that want to do that as well. I happen to be on the other side. I feel like you can create compute that doesn't necessarily need to be implanted, but you can reap some of the benefits from it without having to do that.
Two things come to mind there of on TikTok last year, there were a few viral videos of like girls in college who decided to get a flip phone. So when they went out with their friends, they're like, I don't need everything that's in like this vortex of a device. They're like, I need my essentials. But in that way, it's like, you're taking a few steps back, and like there are a lot of great capabilities that you utilize outside when it comes to like, search, AI capabilities that you can't necessarily access on your flip phone. And I even think about that when I'm on a walk. I'm like, why do I need this entire device? Like I want calls, I want text, for safety, and I want certain things, but it's like I don't need like the vast majority of its offerings when I'm just trying to go out into the world. So like you're saying, it does make sense that this fills a type of void in terms of like your phone, it's mobile, but it does feel like this blend of like the physical and digital world that does sway more towards the digital world at this point because of the apps that we're mostly on them with like social media and stuff. And it doesn't feel, like there's like a natural, intuitive device that's like made for when you're just like going out and about. And I think my second point that I was thinking of is there's a big conversation right now with like kids' relationship with technology and what it should be like. And a lot of some professionals are saying that kids shouldn't get a phone until, middle school, early high school. And people are like, look, that's a big change. They're already getting phones by like 4th grade. And like, we're not going to cut them off from like, this is the way it is now. Like these kids need to understand how to utilize these devices. So I think it's also interesting there of like, it's moving forward with tech, but like in a way that's, not, again, that vortex. If you have any thoughts on those points.
Yeah, I think that Imran always says like we just need to build a better tool. I think it came down to the fact that when the tool doesn't feel good and you see both people actively choosing to not use it, and the why being that, well, it doesn't feel good. I want to go out with my friends, and for some reason, whatever that reason is, it doesn't feel good to bring my smartphone. And so you have people who are actively choosing to do that. And then you have people who have worries about it, right? That they don't, and we hear that a lot. People stop us a lot on the street and say a lot of things to us. But one thing we hear a lot is like, I'm buying it for my kid. I want the AI pin to be their first phone. Because I want them to have access to AI. I want them to have access to technology. I want them to be able to communicate. I want them to have all the benefits and conveniences of technology, but I want them to be safe and present and to not have social media and to not have all the, downsides of what a smartphone brings and complexities of what it brings. And so, we're definitely at that point where we just needed to build a better tool as well. And, I think that what AI Pin offers is a solution there for those people.
Imran, in your TED Talk, you mentioned, the future is not on your face in reference to what many tech companies are building within extended reality. So augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality. And I think people understand that like MR and VR, it does feel like it could easily become, it's so good that it's bad situation, like junk food. Like it's not going to be a bad experience, but it might be too great that you're just like, again, sucked in all the time. But when it comes to AR, some deem it as like a more human-like merging of like the physical and digital worlds. The Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses, they're not AR glasses yet, but, kind of inching towards that. And there's been increasingly reviews, deeming them useful tools that seeing from your natural point of view. But why does your team believe that the future is not on your face?
So I think it's really just about, if you just look at the trajectory of compute going from like mainframes to desktops to the web and smartphones, really what you're talking about there is some kind of progression, right? And we're at this. And every single time a compute platform plateaus, there's always an opportunity to think about what comes next, right? And we have two types of things that have emerged. Some of it can either go into this sort of immersive space, which is full-on VR, MR, or some people call it AR, and some people actually deem it XR as well. So there's a lot of
too many.
all this stuff before the R. All of it is really just about how do you do something with reality that is not reality, and then there's the stuff that we're currently focused on, which is more ambient, right? And that's just really embracing reality and saying, how do you actually bring reality into your compute processing and understanding? And we've created this OS that can work in any of those spaces, right? Like we could potentially power something that does do some of these other pieces. But I think the focus for us right now is we recognize that things like VR and MR are things that are very conditional, and they increase the immersive nature of what you're doing. We kind of already have that, right? Like the smartphones are really good. Some of the stuff that we've got right now is already immersive, and you put it on a larger screen like an iPad, and you put AR capability on that. You've already got some sort of XR interface. For you to be really committed to introduce yet another barrier that is just literally on your face. What you're really doing then is making it difficult for you to interact with other people and the world around you, right? You're basically saying at that point, I'm good. I don't need anything else other than what I've got. And it's a statement, which I think is probably a little early in its days, right? I think there is a world where you can imagine having some sort of augmentation in glasses. But those glasses should actually be glasses that you choose because you want to wear them, not because you have to wear them if you want to get this kind of technology. And so when you put something on your face, you do it because of an actual need. Like you're either like protecting your eyes or you're trying to help yourself see better. And then you go into the space of, does this actually work with my face? There's a huge amount of choice that goes into that space as well. Like, how does this look with the shape of my face? Do I feel comfortable wearing it? The psychology that comes into that, right? And that means that you have to offer this massive spectrum of choice. I wear glasses. I've got some glasses over there. They're like paper clips, right? And a lot of it really comes down to the fact that I have not worn glasses my entire life, and I just want to be able to just help me see details. And we're probably a decade away from seeing anything that's really going to work in a form factor like that. And so I think that's where right now we believe that in order for us to get things that are universal, that everyone can use and even a child can use or anything else, we're pretty far from it. But we're not far from being able to enjoy the benefits of being able to bring in this ambient computing to understand contextual compute. And that's where AI Pin actually is a really interesting product, right? Where you can get the benefits of context without having to deal with the cumbersome things that we have right now in terms of the glasses. The small amount of choice that we have that makes it feel like I'm forced to wear something that I probably wouldn't pick if I had more choices.
Yeah, and there's that conversation of, it's funny, parents were like, don't watch too much TV, it's going to hurt your eyes, and then we have the screens, and but it's like, seriously, because when I have utilized the Vision Pro, I don't have glasses. My vision is like, I don't know if it's 20/20, but it's pretty close. I would take it off and like my vision would be slightly blurry for like a good amount of time. And I'm like, it's just not built for us in that way. But then you have things like Neuralink, which is like, this could help cure blindness. I'm like, it's like a problem that it could solve. Anyway, but speaking of form factor, I'm interested your thoughts going into why you went with a pin, because when you think of like a smartwatch, it's an evolution of an accessory that a lot of people were wearing Smart glasses, same thing. And then like another wearable startup is going with a necklace, and the founder's train of thought was that people have been wearing pendants for thousands of years. So when it comes to a pin, maybe it's not as mainstream as those. Why did it feel like the right design choice for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's really just about, number one, it's about not having a body-worn wearable versus like a clothing-worn wearable, something that you can actually just place wherever you want. And I think that is the key piece, getting people to feel really comfortable with it. Context is the biggest reason why you want to wear something that can share the same field of view as you, right? We are able to do some things now. They're just really, really early days. We think of it as like dial-up days of a lot of the AI context capabilities. The multimodal aspect, meaning the ability to bring in things beyond text, video and sound and image, is really something that is modeled after how we process information, right? We are multimodal beings, right? So we process text and we process sound and we process vision in that way. And so if you want to create a computer that can actually help you do that, you have to create one that actually has an ability to share the same context with you. And so AI Pin is designed to actually sit above your breast line and below your eye field of view, your eyes, and just share this whole space right here. And so it can see what you can see when you want it to do it. It's not always recording or doing anything like that. But when you engage with it, it can do that. It can come in the form of a necklace as well, right? Like we've got a very versatile attachment mechanism that can allow you to do many, many things. And we've got a few things that we're working on.
I think people have already built some in our Discord.
Yeah.
Shout out to Discord. I think they built some prototypes of their own attachments. People are going to do things with it. They're going to build their own accessories, which I think is going to be really cool to see.
But the main thing there is that it's a new kind of contextual computer, right? That understands what you may be doing and what you might want to engage with it in. And so in terms of the form factor being different than a watch or something you stick in your pocket or hold in your hand, it's because of that. It's because we want to be able to create something that can help you when you're doing something, that understands what you might be doing in that moment.
Yeah, I was going to say that, one of the things that's really interesting is that even in our own usage, like we use our pin while we're watching TV. We use it while we're using our laptop. We use it while we're on our phones. And we'll use it on the charge pad, like while it's charging on our desktop, we're at our desk, we're using our laptop and we're using our pin, and people stick it to random places. We were in Austin and like Sam stuck it to the fridge and everyone was taking photos like as they were walking through the house, So I think what you can use it in the charge case, like Imran, we showed in the most recent video. And so I think it is about being flexible, which you don't get from a smartwatch even, right? And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what people do with it and what they build for it. And obviously we're going to build more accessories and build more functionality to be able to use it in more ways. But yeah, we're just in the early days too.
And Bethany, you very blatantly stated in one of your videos, we don't do apps. Would love to hear more about why you want to move away from that for the AI pin, because we've been inundated with apps over the past decade.
Yeah, I think it comes down to how it works. And one of the issues with apps and where we are today with how we interact with computers is it's very manual, right? And it puts a lot of the burden on you as a customer and a user to do all the work. And so you see people online talking about like the 10 blue links of Google, right? It's the same idea. All the work is on you to have to, when you search for something, to then have to dig through and figure out, well, which is the best one and which one has the actual answer I need. And the same thing is true of apps. If you need access to a service or a resource, you have to first know that an app exists to solve that problem for you. So you first have to have the mental load of, is there an app for this? Oh, what is that? What is the app for it? And then you have to search for it. Then you have to download it. Then you have to learn the entire interaction model for that app. Every app's UI is different. Now you have to learn how to use that app. Then you have to log in, create an account, manage the flow of it. And now you have this other thing that you have to manage, right, in terms of that application. And what AI allows us now is to get rid of that entire flow. And now letting AI do a lot of the work for you is where we are today. And you can then just focus on what are you trying to get, and that's all you need to do. And the computer does the rest.
I think the 10 blue links was a good example, because the thing about that is useful though is, it gives you agency, autonomy in order to like sift through things and like, prioritize what's most important to you. Yes, AI is really helpful in like prioritizing maybe first page results, but it's still nice to, look around and have that part of it. One of the examples you guys had in your video was like, there was a book and you were like, asking about the book and then you're like, buy it. And I saw someone mention, they're like, I have a million questions in between there. Like, where'd you buy it from? How did you know it was the lowest price? Like, do they have, a partnership with a certain company so they're going to prioritize their prices? Like those types of questions. Do you think it's truly ready for, something like that? Or like how can people know that they should be able to trust AI to do those types of things?
Yeah, for us, I think it's really going to come down to the services that you have running on AI Pin, for example. And so in the case of purchasing, we've got the ability to create experiences that allow you to purchase it, and we're actually just formalizing some of those relationships so that you can actually buy them from some of your favorite retailers, right? And so if you have that relationship, you'll be able to purchase it through that retailer. And so it's not so much like bargain hunting across the internet. You could probably ask a few things, and with some of the work that we're doing on the agent stuff, you can go off and then ask a question like, great, is this something that is cheaper here or here or here, or go find the best price? You'll be able to do some of that stuff in the future. But I think at the high level in that video, what we were just showing is that when you have a link and a relationship with an established retailer, and you trust that retailer and you have an account with them, you just buy it.
Yeah, remove the friction of that experience.
And so, I think another way to think about this in terms of like the no apps thing and the no apps thing and then the 10 blue links piece is that where we're going is to really be able to allow for context to play alongside your AI, to be alongside not needing these app experiences in the same way that feel very manual right now. If you just take like booking any kind of ride share right now, it's a pretty manual process, right? And you can do things like, use voice, but they don't actually give you everything unless you were to do it manually, right? And so in the future, you can imagine AI Pin not only getting you a car, but when you go outside, helping you understand which one it is. So making sure you get into the right one, which is, I think something that people have to go back into the app, check the number plates and things like that. Just make sure they're getting into the right car. In a really powerful context system, all of that stuff can be handled for you without you ever having to launch the app, or even in times, even have a relationship with a rideshare provider to begin with, right? You can just get one in a country where you might not have the relationship with that ride service. So I think that's where we want to be able to go. But that's the power of the SDK. That's the power of the multimodal compute platform that allows for these things to happen over time. And that's the promise, right? And we're still in the early days. And I think what we'll be able to see once we launch our SDK is that we'll move closer and closer and closer to being a more mature platform because of that.
Yeah, you mentioned like the AI Pin helping depict context around you, like, helping you figure out which Uber it is, like the car coming up. And a critique I've seen are people like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have like a body cam on you 24/7. But it's interesting because the privacy approaches that you guys have taken are actually, more than what the smartphone takes. There's no wake words. I've never had like Siri or anything on because I've been weird about that. I've never had like a Alexa or Google Home. And so you touch it to activate it and speak to it. And then something like when it's recording, there is, a trust light is how you frame it. So I think those things are awesome. But also in terms of privacy, people have gotten really comfortable communicating in silence, like typing on their phones. And so the only way to communicate with your AI pin is through voice and speaking out loud. There's also not any type of screen. So, your visual experience is through the laser ink display, which is not very discreet in public. So how do you see that evolving? Because while those things are like fine in a lot of context, when, you want more privacy, not necessarily. So how do you see that evolving?
Yeah. So, I think, again, because there is so much that the device can do that we're not doing, we see ourselves being able to offer new types of input that go beyond voice. So you don't actually have to speak to it eventually. When it comes down to being able to see things, I think there's a balance between just what you actually need to see versus what the device is doing for you. And so it is an input mechanism that goes beyond you actually having to input onto a screen. And so that could be spoken to. That could be something else in the future. We're thinking about other ways to do that. But I think the biggest piece here is that if you've got the operating system doing a lot of this work for you, the need to actually read a lot is diminished considerably, right? And those few things that you have to really understand can be done in these very small transactions. So we're going to be leaning into more of that versus like you having to need a screen for a lot of these things. So in the future, we'll see those kinds of things shaping the experience to be different as a result.
Yeah, and I think that you're right too, that we are now, our society now, although I think maybe the younger generations are changing a little bit, but I think at least some of us that kind of grew up in the iPhone era have become really accustomed to silence and ignoring one another, like silence and ignoring one another and in our phones, which is somewhat sad. But I do think it's funny that it's made us feel less comfortable talking on the phone, right? People use their phones less. They're more comfortable texting. They're more comfortable kind of just like existing in isolation in their phone. And so I do think that, like Imran mentioned before, we're not necessarily trying to replace all moments that you would use your phone. Of course, there's going to be moments where you feel like something is really private and you don't necessarily want to use your voice or use the laser to do that one action. Like, you're going to use your phone for that, and that's okay. Like we said, over time, things will evolve on the pin and also peripheral devices that we build or experiences that we build on other devices that allow you to do more in those moments. But for now, you'll use your phone for that. But I do think we're seeing this change in behavior too with the younger generations, where I do think that they're becoming more comfortable, maybe not living in that isolation, but maybe talking more openly out in public. And so I think it's going to be interesting to watch how behavior changes.
Yeah, I mean, the rise of people sending voice notes over iMessage or just to input voice notes in their phone so they remember things later instead of typing out the notes. And also I've been testing it out the past 48 hours, and I noticed just around my apartment, I was a little bit cooped up, but just speaking out loud, it was this behavior change of, I was like, oh, maybe I'll call someone, someone I typically don't call during the day or whatever. I was just in the flow of speaking out loud. So I was like, oh, I'll call my mom or my grandma or someone. Cause if you're in silence all day, you're I'm just going to stay in that. It's kind of hard to get you out of that flow state. But
did you make that call?
I did.
And how was it?
It was good.
Yeah,
yeah, it was good. So I just thought that was interesting. Again, it was only 48 hours. So I'm is this a honeymoon phase of oh, I'm just talking out loud, whatever. But I did find that interesting that it pushed that.
There's just something very efficient about voice. And I know there's been a promise for voice for a very, very long time. But when it's coupled with something that has context and it has an OS that's really driving it, it becomes super powerful. I'm curious what your next 48 hours are.
I know.
After that, but
keep you updated.
It's also I tell people that our belief of or our understanding of what an assistant is today is so broken because our experience with assistants in the past is like you have to speak to it in a certain way and you feel rushed and you're like, you're stressed talking to it. And I try to tell people that with the pin, what we're trying to do is different, which is that we're trying to be more compassionate with the way that we listen and understand. And what that means is that you can take your time with it. You can, as you're talking to it, you could say, no, actually, never mind. That's not what I meant. What I meant was like, can you tell me, right? And you can change direction in the middle of your question and it will understand and answer actually what you want to know. We've seen that with children like 5, 6, 7 years old, that they, even younger, they pick up the pin, they put it on, they know how to use the laser instantly, and they speak to it in the way that they speak with, missing words, mispronounced words, and rambling on, and the pin still understands them. And I think that, again, we're kind of changing how we view the world of like voice first interfaces for sure.
While you can take photos and videos with your AI pin, again, it's screenless. So the only media you can really access is, music. You can see a preview of the photos and videos you've taken, but still screenless. So what do you think about the role of accessing media when it comes to wearables?
Yeah, we've got the desire and we're working on ways to bring different types of media on, things like audiobooks and podcasts and there's a world of stuff out there that's just really amazing. YouTube is amazing as well. Like my favorite subscription is my YouTube subscription more than Netflix or Disney or anything, actually.
It's valid.
And mainly because it's just so fresh, right? There's just always new content. There's tons of content out there. And it's just so robust. But most of the time I'm listening to it than I am actually like watching it, very rarely, because I'm always doing something else while I'm doing a YouTube thing. And so again, there it is where it's like we have to figure out, are there different ways for us to get this stuff, right? And at the same time, I've got my Apple TV, I've got my iPads, and I've got my iPhone that I love and care about so much. But what's missing then, I think, is the ability to just kind of like have it understand me and then go off and give me exactly what I want in moments where I'm not in front of my Apple TV and things like that, right? Where I don't want to bust out my phone. And so we see there being a lot of opportunity there. There's just different types of media, I think, like social media consumption that the device is not going to do.
Yep.
We've got a great device for that right now, and it's really probably better at that than it is, other things.
Yeah, and it goes against your ethos to tap into that too. Like, when I'm listening to a podcast, it's like I'm motivated to also put my laundry away or like put away the dishes when I'm doing that. Like you're saying, simultaneously do something else. Yeah. Rather than just like sit and consume fully and have your full attention.
And it's pretty cool, I think, like, just to be able to hear some of those things. I've got a few podcasts that we're sort of trying and listening to right now. And they're just amazing because I'm doing other things and it's right here. Incidentally, I don't use the pin with headphones very often unless I want to actually be really discreet. But, it comes down to choice.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk pricing because people have had their thoughts. The AI pin starts at $6.99, though there is a $7.99 option as well. And then you have the $24 a month subscription. And then also, like, to have music access, you utilize Tidal, correct? And then there's competing devices that are going for like $200, and then something like a iPhone 15 Pros for 128 gigabytes starts at $9.99. I don't really have a question because it's, you price things and consumers choose whether they want to purchase it or not. But if you have any elaboration on why this price range made sense for you guys.
Yeah, I think that we made the decision to offer the pin as a bundle right now with the charge case and extra battery and the booster. And you get all of these things that we're offering together for $6.99 because we felt that, that's how we were using it. That's how we love to use it. And so we thought at the start that we would provide what we felt was the experience that we were loving. I think that there are options
to show people how it's intended to work together with other things as a system.
I do think that there are options there where we can offer different have different offerings that'll be lower cost and in terms of an entry point. And
Absolutely.
I think that's a huge priority for us right now. We're talking a lot about that. We know that it, for a Gen 1 product, it's always, for us, it's higher price than we know, than some people can afford right now. And so it's a huge conversation for us internally about how can we offer different entry point prices right now? What can we do in the medium term? Also on the hardware to make something that might be easier for and more accessible. So that's always, I think, part of the conversation when you're building a Gen 1 product that, there's a lot of complexity that goes into getting the cost where it is. But I think that we have some options and we're looking into it for sure.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that's on your radar. That's cool because I know a lot of people want to try this stuff and that's good to hear. My last question is, what are you most curious or excited to see play out in the future, whether it be within your realm or just like generally within culture? What are you most excited about?
You go first.
I think what's amazing is we've got a massive population on the planet that really understands what it means to have network connected compute and the promise. I'm excited about the curiosity for AI. I think that it's going to be amazing just to see like what happens this year and versus next year and in the next 5 years. There's going to be a massive amount of change, right?
Buckle up.
And so I think I'm excited to be in part a spectator as well as someone that's involved in it, as well as someone that is going to be using a lot of the things that are going to be developed by a lot of people. So it's just an amazing time right now. I can't think of a more amazing moment than now for all of compute. Actually, it's literally the most exciting time if you're into compute that there has ever been. So there's a lot to be excited about for that reason. There's a reignited interest in hardware. I think we kind of broke through in a way that I think has inspired a lot of people, which is awesome. I'd love to talk to more people that want to do great things like that. We've got some people that I think are doing super interesting things. So I'm excited about what people are going to be building for AI Pin, obviously, as well. Again, just really being immersed in this like beautiful, beautiful space that has a lot of potential for us to really do amazing things.
Awesome. Bethany?
Yeah, I would also just add that Imran calls it like the dial-up days of AI, which is true. We're at such the baby infant stage and there's a lot of work left to do. And I think what I love about building a 1.0 product and why for me it became addictive, like the first time I was part of a 1.0 shipping a hardware product and software, it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Is that there's a lot of growth that happens really quickly. And when you put something out there, the world will effectively tell you in a lot of ways where to go next. And it's about that refinement of what do we have to make better? What isn't good enough? What do people want it to be? What are they excited about? You go out in the street and people say like, here's what I love about it. And here's what I hate about it. And there's going to be a lot of people who say, here's what I hate about it. And I love those just as much as I say, as just as much as the things that people love, because I think it's ultimately.
That's what makes the product better.
Yeah. It's ultimately going to like form it into this incredible thing. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the growth that's going to come for me personally, for the team, for the product, as we continue to evolve it once it's in people's hands. And it's never easy. It's actually the hardest part and the most painful part. But I think there's just so much potential. So I'm really excited.
Well, Bethany and Imran, thank you so much for your time. Where can everyone keep up with your work?
You can go to humane.com. follow us on Twitter at Humane and on Instagram at hu.ma.ne. Where else are we?
Yeah, that's about it.
Not on Truth Social yet.
Oh, gosh.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much
Thank you for
again.
having us. This was great.